First of all, a little bit of different role for you, I guess an elevated one at that. What does that mean to you, and what kind of impact do you want to make?
Well, I'm very excited to start as the floor leader, and I think my primary role is to make sure that all the floor operations run smoothly, that we do our work efficiently, and that all of our members are supported and encouraged to speak out on bills that are important to them, and on budget bills especially too, So I'm very excited to get started with it, and I'd been the assistant floor leader, but to be running the floor and working with the other side of the aisle, that's the way it has to go. So I'm very happy to do that.
I'm sure that your constituents see it as their voice being heard, right? In a lot of ways, you're speaking for them, in whatever the policy might be, legislation. There's a lot of weight to that, right?
Yeah, I think it does help me to amplify voice from my own district, but I think it's also just making sure that, party aside and our own personal disagreements on different pieces of legislation, the process itself, the way we run, needs to be a good one. It needs to be fair. We need to make sure that just because we're on the minority side that we're still heard. And, all of that is really important for the bigger picture of how our government runs. So I feel very strongly about that, and so I'm very happy to have been selected.
That's great.
Yeah.
First of all, I guess your priority as we head into the session, what are you looking at?
I think, I have to almost take it like month by month, the way that things go.
Yeah.
And I think, the first thing that we'll really start on are some chapter amendments to pieces of legislation, big pieces of legislation that were passed last year. And that's our work over the next few weeks, in addition to just trying to get, I'm going to help run all our new members. We have 6 new members, our new member orientation. But, we've got big chapters like the short-term rental bill, the climate bill that was passed, the super fund. So I have to start digging into those, seeing what those changes were. Sometimes chapters are really small and kind of not controversial. I have a feeling that these are going to be meatier, and so I really want to get ready to debate those and get ready to do them.
Usually, yeah. Just kind of aside, but it feels like the governor will draw some of it back. That, when it comes to a chapter amendment, in terms of what it is that something you can support, I guess, and amplify in that aspect?
Yeah.
It tries to moderate what the legislation might be.
Yeah.
Because obviously, usually it's a Democrat-passed bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So sometimes you'll find that our members on the minority side will be a no on a piece of legislation, but then we'll vote yes on the chapter, because sometimes the chapter will moderate the bill, like you said, and make it a little bit better. A lot of times the chapters, we find, track the debate that we did. And that's gratifying, because we're trying to make points about what's good, bad, unconstitutional, too expensive, whatever our points are. Sometimes that'll get tracked, and so a lot of times we do support chapters if the governor has gone ahead. Sometimes it makes the bill worse. Sometimes it guts the bill to the point where maybe you like the original bill, but you can't support the chapter because it really undoes 80-90% of it. So we'll have to see. One by one, we'll just get through them.
What do you think of obviously the affordability is what everyone's talking about. The governor is going to she's rolling it out as a part of her agenda for the state of the state. What do you think of her initiatives now for the child tax credit increase, the checks up to $500? Do you think that makes New York more affordable?
I think, the child care part is something that our conference rolled out a couple of years ago. And it's disappointing when, we roll out an idea and that bill gets blocked. But then, if you don't care who gets the credit, if you just say a good idea is a good idea, then I'm happy. I think that's a good idea that she has. I think a $300 or a $500 kind of rebate check coming back, I think is kind of a slap in the face. When people, a lot of people are spending more than that in a month on their utility bill, or a week going to the grocery store, depending on the size of your family. I know I was happy to have all the kids home for Thanksgiving and for Christmas, but boy, I really was feeling the pain at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And people are. So I think, we all agree that affordability is an issue, but I think each side of the aisle is going to have perhaps a different way of approaching it. I think in a lot of ways, our side of the aisle's got feeling like we need to really take a look at the overall size of our budget and figure out, how it's an unsustainable growth pattern that we're in. And that's hard, because so much of it is healthcare and education, and nobody wants to make cuts in those areas. But, if you tracked the growth of the budget over the last few years, it's just you can't do it. And we've got more revenue coming in through things like legalized sports gambling, and then of course cannabis will maybe start to pick up after just a terrible rollout. But we'll have a little bit more in the terms of revenue. But if some folks want to spend that all plus more, I definitely don't think that we should be taxing. I think that's a non-starter for me.
Yeah, I'm wondering, what do you think resonates the most, that people can feel the most, I guess, when it comes to their pocketbook? Is it lowering taxes, I guess, at the end of the day, or is it these hidden things that you talk about, these mandates and some of these initiatives? I guess, where does it fall? Is it both at the end? Is it the hidden and is it the obvious?
I think it's all of it. I don't think that's why I just don't think that it can fall into a neat teaser of the governor's budget, like this bullet point is going to just fix it. It's not. It's to me that's a Band-Aid on a bullet wound to give somebody a $300 or $500 check. I think for most people, they have a budget. They have a budget, and yeah, they feel pain in April. They've got to turn around and pay taxes, and if their taxes are going up, that's going to be a big problem. But I think day to day, week to week, it's utility costs, which I would argue with the CLCPA and what those mandates are going to bring, that's only going to drive costs up. I mean, I was looking at my utility bills the other day, and they've gone up significantly, significantly. And if you're on a fixed income, which I'm not at this point, but I know many, many people who are that I represent, that's a big problem, if you're on a fixed income. So I think if, food costs continue to, they're not really leveling. I don't know if they're leveling off or what. I know that it's kind of like the Democrats are saying, well, we don't really have more crime. Crime's coming down, but it's a perception that people don't feel safe. I think that's garbage. I think that it depends on what crime category you're talking about and where that crime is occurring. It's the same thing with food prices and things like that. I mean, you could say that inflation is leveling off, but people certainly aren't feeling it. People are paying more than they ever did. So
you mentioned the crime aspect,
yeah.
And the governor the other day was talking about it being tied to severe mental illness and wanting to expand some things that doctors can do in terms of involuntary committing, or Kendra's law, expanding that as well. What do you think of that in helping not only the mental illness but also helping public safety?
Yeah, well, I think mental health issues are a big problem, and I think that there are a lot of people walking around who are not receiving treatment that they need and aren't being required to. And I think we always have to try to balance your personal freedom and your rights against the need for public safety. So that's the bigger issue, and I think we've got to try to I'm willing to look at any solutions that we can. Just, parenthetically, I'd say that yesterday I was in my district in Ballston Spa, where we just cut the ribbon on a new treatment of Rise Above, a new treatment program, which is going to allow people that have addiction, mental health issues to be in almost like a dorm-like setting and get their treatment brought right to them so that they don't have to drive to it. Something like that is really important, and we need that more around the state to try to help people reach them. But involuntary commitment is always a tricky issue. But I think that we do have to consider the fact that there are people walking around among us who are having a lot of problems, and we have to try to present a whole range of solutions to those.
Last one is obviously we saw the terrible video at Marcy Correctional last month. There's, I know, a letter amongst the majority going around, I think on the Senate side, maybe the Assembly too, of to close down the facility. Where do you stand on that? Do you think it should be closed down?
No, I don't. I think that the governor and her administration, but previous administrations have been consistently closing down many facilities, and some of them are more treatment type facilities too. That I don't think that that's the answer. I think that was a horrific incident. I'm glad that was caught on body cam, and I'm a big believer in that level of transparency for our corrections officers and our law enforcement. I think that's important. And they need to be held completely accountable for what happened, but I don't think the answer is closure, no.
Are there changes needed to the system to prevent this from happening again?
Probably. We can. I would take a look at any suggestions that people have, but I think that it's hard to argue when you see a video like that, right? I mean, that's just horrible, and I feel very, very, very badly for that man's family. He was incarcerated. He certainly didn't. He should not have lost his life. But I think that other than holding those COs accountable and taking a look at other measures that are needed, if there's an environment that's a very unhealthy, unsafe environment that's caused by a culture, within a particular correctional facility, maybe we could try to get at that. But I just don't think closure is the answer. There are so many really hardworking and good corrections officers working right now that, unfortunately, it's like any other profession. When something like that happens, it casts a terrible shadow on all of them. It paints with a very broad brush in a negative way, and that's not to excuse at all what happened. But I just think that there are so many really good people that are doing that job, and that is a really, really hard job. So let's weed out anybody that is doing the wrong thing, and let's try to address all of the shortages in that career and so many other in our law enforcement. It's really hard to attract people to come into a career that is that difficult, and we have to try to do the very best that we can.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.